And we live.
We live.
Welcome.
Hey. A-OK. A-OK.
A-OK.
What's up, everybody out there in the world?
Have we got another one?
For you today. Lined up. Welcome, everybody, to episode 2 of Soldiers of Science. I am Tony D, coming at you live from San Diego.
And I am Flex, coming at you live from Northern California, the wonderful Bay Area, California.
Thank you for joining us, those live, those watching the replay, those watching live, those listening to the podcast out there. Everybody, we just want to bring you in for a warm welcome. August 31st, 2020. A lot has happened since the last time we got together. 2 weeks in 2020. I know there's some sort of relative measurement of time that's going to equal out to. Right now, I don't think we can measure it. We'll look back in a couple of years and be able to be like, yeah, 2 weeks in 2020 was like 7 years. I don't know. We'll be able to measure it scientifically somehow. But right now, in the middle of it, it's impossible. All
just
we
like
know
that
is
Movie Interstellar.
Yeah, it just don't know.
1
exactly.
hour on Earth is 7, or 1 hour here is 7 hours on Earth, or 7 years on Earth, or whatever.
Yeah, dude. It's exactly. That's what 2020 is. Exactly. We're all just, I don't even know. Like, space and time make no sense right now.
No.
With that, real quick, before we get into the meat of the show, just want to quickly remind y'all to like, comment, subscribe, spread the love, share the news, hit us up on social media, follow our accounts if you're so inclined. On Instagram, you can find us at Soldiers of Science. I'm so sorry. You were supposed to say that, huh, Flex?
Oh, it's all good.
And my bad. And Twitter, we are at Soldier Science. Due to the character limitation, it could not be the full name of the podcast, so that's why it's abbreviated. But Soldier Science, at Soldier Science. And for those of you listening that do not like to watch YouTube channel content, we spell Soldier Souldier, bringing you a little bit of soul on top of the science in this intergalactic battle for truth and fact and common purpose and common ground.
Yeah, definitely check us out. Like Tony and I are obviously tag teaming on this whole thing. So he's volunteered to manage the Twitter account. I've volunteered to manage the Instagram account. So just give us a little bit of time, but please reach out. I'm going to start posting all the reminders for the shows on the Graham account. I think Tony will do the same. And then we'll just try to reach out to all of our fellow friends to try to get some more involvement.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, let's jump in. I think everybody's going to have a little bit of some flavor that they like tonight. We're going to cover a lot of ground. Again, like we talked about, a lot has happened in the last 2 weeks. But first and foremost, we're going to start off with a little bit of, drum roll please, poetry. I got some bars for y'all. This is a tradition we hope to keep strong every episode. I'm going to write an original piece, probably 30 minutes before we go live, because that's how I've always been my entire life. King of procrastination. But yeah, it's crazy because I find a lot of inspiration with the pressure that brings. It's been that way. And yeah, even today, I'll admit I wasn't feeling very creative. Wasn't really into the whole creative mindset. But once I sat down to actually do it, once I, got down to brass tacks, motivation came, and I hope that y'all like what I came up with for y'all tonight. Something that we can hopefully look back to and air wide and bring some inspiration to folks. So with that, let me jump right into it. Tonight's piece is called Common Ground.
Nice.
Here we go. Common ground. Now that we need it more than ever, why does it feel so far away? Common ground. From DC to Kenosha, from Portland to Minnesota, common ground. In the cities, in the suburbs, from the coasts into the plains, common ground. On the right, on the left, from the top to the bottom, common ground. In the middle, at the borders, out in international waters, common ground. Every being, every movement, every effort to move forward, common ground. What is grown inside our minds sets the limits of our tribes. So if we hope to turn the tides, we must garden far and wide. And all we need is but one seed to sow the roots that set us free. Common ground. And that's it.
Awesome. Nice, man.
For tonight. If you want to reread that or share that far and wide, we'll be sure to post that into the description of this episode on our YouTube channel. So be on the lookout for that. And with that, I will pass it up north to the OG Flex coming at you with the next topics.
Yeah.
I'm sure you will find very enthralling, my friends.
Yeah, we'll see. As much as we prepare for these shows, like every time Tony does his poetry, like it's the first time I'm hearing it, so it's always awesome to hear it first live with you all. Got the chat going. We're on Twitch, we're on YouTube, so anybody watching, don't be shy and give us a little shout out or give us your thoughts. Jumping right into the latest pandemic news. So we're going to do this at the beginning of every show, just kind of go over the situation for those of you who may not be following as closely anymore. I've kind of trailed away from it personally. So we just currently hit 6 million cases total in the United States alone, 183,450 deaths. But there's some good news. So at least 374 new coronavirus deaths and 33,000 new cases were reported in the U.S. on August 30th, so yesterday. Over the past week, there have been an average of 42,000 cases per day, which is still extremely high, right? We definitely are trying to get that number down, but it is a decrease of 18% from the average 2 weeks earlier. So as of Monday, today, evening, 6,041,800 people in the United States have been infected. At least as best as we can tell with the tests that we have and the research that's being done to collect all of the data. Case numbers remain persistently high across much of the country, though reports of new cases have dropped considerably since late July, when the country averaged well over 60,000 per day. So we are kind of in a better trend moving forward or currently. As much as the South and West saw vast improvement, as the Northeast kept case reports low, new infections were rising by late summer across parts of the Midwest and several of America's islands. Guam is one of them that had a super spike in March. It went down and it flattened, and it's spiking up again. But we're talking a relatively small amount of cases, which for them is still significant, much smaller population there. But it is still a low number, but they are spiking. Deaths still well below their peak from spring levels, average about 1,000 per day through most of August, more than double the average from early July. And I actually wanted to double click on this. So Tony, he's not aware of some of the kind of the other research that I've done on this. Kind of unrelated to this, but I've been hearing a ton of arguments like, oh, this whole coronavirus thing is blown out of control, right? Blown out of proportion. And so I dug into some numbers and I did find it interesting. If we look at cancer deaths per year, it's 600,000 in the US alone. If we look at smoking deaths per year, it's 480,000 in the US alone. Heart disease is another 647,000 deaths, and obesity is another 300,000 deaths. So this argument that coronavirus is blown out of proportion because it mainly impacts people with basically most of these types of conditions: smoking, heart disease, obesity, and potentially some forms of cancer. The numbers could be skewed and we don't really know. Well, this person was dying of, X anyway, and now because of coronavirus, it accelerated that person's, lack of survival, essentially. So I'm not arguing one thing or another. I'm just saying it is interesting that we have such high numbers of deaths in these other areas. Coronavirus still remains well below those numbers. However, again, I'm not arguing one thing or another. Please continue to wear your mask. Please continue to do what you have to do to social distance, to keep your family safe, to keep yourself safe. It is much more dangerous than the flu. Flu kills less than 1%. Coronavirus kills more than 3.4%, I think, on average globally at this point, from the research I did earlier today. Is kind of the consensus, 3.4, 3.5%. So it is much deadlier than the flu. However, we've kind of gotten away with a lot. Like, this could have been much worse, right? This virus could have been much worse. But again, it's not over. Yeah. It's nowhere near being over.
No, exactly. And if this was a dry run for something worse,
exactly,
we have fucking miserably failed. So let that be a lesson and a warning. We've got a lot of learning to do.
A lot of learning to do, lots of research to continue to fund, and the pandemic committee needs to be reinstated. The response team, forget the correct term, but essentially a lot of funding that was pulled needs to be reinstated and readministered for this. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to share the content that I was referencing, but it was the New York Times. We do have to get permission from the Times. So for the next show, I'll try to get some information from a different source that doesn't require permission. Everybody's got to make their money at the end of the day, and I get it. So jumping right into wildfires, and that's another funny term. The California wildfires, for those of you who may not know, Tony and I both live in California. I'm in Northern California, but we've experienced probably the worst wildfires on record, at least in the last 40 to 50 years. Every year, it seems to be the biggest fire on record, the biggest fires on record, the most damage on record. One thing that came up recently that I thought was interesting is we keep calling these things wildfires, when in fact, in the last decade alone, the vast majority of these fires are man-made fires. So it's interesting that we still call them wildfires, even though most of them are man-made. Like last year was PG&E was deemed responsible for the catastrophic fire that took out essentially an entire city of Paradise in California. But this year, these big fires that I'm about to speak on, the CZU complex, the CNU complex, and then there are all these complex of fires that were started by lightning. We had 12,000 lightning strikes in less than 24 hours up here in Northern California. It started just below Monterey, and it kind of worked its way all the way up through Northern California towards Oregon. And because of this, we now officially have the worst air quality in the world, is the headline that I read last week. Now, this one is just saying is worse than India, but we've consistently had some of the worst air quality in the world because of this. So the main reason why I'm bringing this up is, first of all, it's a major deal up here in the Bay Area, around the Santa Cruz Mountains. Like, we know people that have had to evacuate. We know people that have lost their homes. We know people that have been, dramatically impacted by this. So I just want to give, thoughts and shout outs and thoughts and prayers to everyone that's going through some hard times right now, that have had to be forced evacuated, have lost their homes. This is a very, very tragic situation. And we just hope that things can get sorted out and the state is able to provide the funding that you need during this time, and the support that you need during this time. Another thing that we lost was Big Basin. Originally thought that we lost the entire park. So Big Basin is one of the oldest park in California, and it's here in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and it has some of the most majestic and old growth redwood trees in the world. And as you know, redwood trees mainly just grow in California. There's some in Oregon as well, but the large sequoia variety there are some here that are over 2,000 years old, and some of those are in Big Basin. So there was a huge fear that we lost, these 2,000-year-old trees, one of which is called the mother of the forest. The other is the father of the forest. Just 48 hours ago, it was confirmed that they survived, and many more also have survived, which is tremendous news. And yeah, these trees they're incredible, first of all, because they get so large, they get so tall. They're the tallest trees on Earth, but they're also dependent on fire to replicate, to they burn down, and then their seedlings drop into the soil, and then that's how they reproduce, essentially, distribute their seeds. So they have, for those of you who may not know, they have these incredibly complex and dense bark structures, essentially, and some of them are over a foot thick, and it protects the tree from fire. So that's one of the main reasons why some of them have survived. Many have burned, but not the oldest and the biggest ones so far that we know of. Right now, there's a huge operation going on in cutting down fir, these large fir trees that are growing near and around the redwood trees that have been damaged, and they're on the verge of collapsing and taking down some of the redwood trees with them. So they're actually logging these out right now in the park and the surrounding areas. And then going back to the fires, I just wanted to reference Cal Fire real quick. So these are the three major fires that are going on right now. The LNU, which is up north near Napa and not really Santa Rosa, but north of Fairfield, Vacaville. A portion of Vacaville was evacuated. This one is only 66% contained. And a week ago, it was essentially 0 to 5% contained for the first couple 100,000 acres that burned. We're now at 375,000 acres for this fire alone. And then if we go over to the one in East San Jose, we're looking at 383,000 acres burned so far, only 60% contained. I mean, anything over 50% is a really good sign. They have a good hold and control over the fire. But again, these fires are just massive. And this one here, the one where Big Basin is literally directly in the middle of this area that's highlighted in red, which is the burn area, 85,000 acres, 41% contained. And I actually know personally people that live in Boulder Creek, which is right here. The name just kind of disappeared, but
real quick, for those of you that are listening to the podcast, if you do want to see these graphics in these areas in California that have been impacted, Alex is talking to you right now. Check out the YouTube channel. Hit us up. You can watch all of us. You can see us in the flesh. And yeah, just so you know, if you do want to get a visual for what we're talking about right now, all of that is available on the YouTube channel. You can scroll through and check this stuff out for yourselves.
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, fire.ca.gov is the one that I'm referencing right now. And then the article previously I just is USA Today. There's a Mercury News one that's really good, but it was full of ads, so I didn't want to leverage that one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we'll post all the links. Yeah, exactly. To those articles as well in the description of this episode. So be sure to check that out as well.
But you can see Big Basin is right there in the middle. So that was a primary concern. And lastly, I'll just kind of go over the air quality situation that's here for some people that, don't live in California and aren't really familiar. I've been here about 30 years, and the last 4, I would say, have been the worst. Last year was the worst for sure. And this year topped it off. So in the middle of a pandemic, we live in a very small home, no AC, middle of a heat wave, and then catastrophic fires on top of that. So it's been a challenging few weeks.
Yeah,
but I can't complain because we, are fortunate to be more in the city, and we haven't been forced to evacuate, or we haven't lost our home. We rent here, but in any case, it's still a very challenging situation for most people. So right now, actually, the only reason why I'm able to do this podcast in the garage where I'm at, because it's a detached garage and I breathe the air from the outside. There's no air circulation, or there's no air filtration in where I'm at now. The only reason why I can do it is because the air quality is, I'm in this peninsula area here. So between 60 and 80, which is completely acceptable. What's of concern and has been of concern for a long time, and I really worry, and I'm concerned about you guys up in the valley. If anyone's listening from the valley, specifically Sacramento, and really all up and down, all the way down to Bakersfield. These mountains here block a lot of the smoke from penetrating into Los Angeles and sunny San Diego, of course. But up here in the entire valley and the entire Sierra Nevada mountain range is completely impacted. So again, if you're listening on the podcast, I'm referencing purpleair.com, which is a cool little site that leverages, you can purchase air quality sensors, install them in your home, and then you feed all the data to their database. But then anyone can kind of look anywhere in the world to kind of get a gauge for the live current air quality. And we're in the 150s to 200s every single day since the beginning of the fires in this area. So Lake Tahoe seems to be even worse on most days. It's 182 right now. And remember, guys, the fires are 60% contained at this point, and it's still raging in terms of the smoke. So it'd be nice to be, somewhere in middle of Washington right now where you have a one. One is good. But so, yeah, my hearts and prayers to everyone that's been impacted by this. And we'll continue to follow it. Hopefully by the next time we do a podcast in 2 weeks, the fire situation will be under control for the general population. And
yes,
we'll be looking.
That air quality will be one for everyone, hopefully.
Yes.
That sounds nice. So the beautiful fresh air right there in the middle of Washington State. But yeah, hopefully it continues to clear up. They get more containment. Thank you, Alex, for running us through that. That was a really, really good, insightful update on some of the chaos that we've been going through. And that has literally been going on just in the past 2 weeks. It was not going on before episode 1. So that has all come up and taken off since the last time we all met with you guys. So that's a little, just a taste of what you all are aware of 2020 can bring us in a very short manner of time. And with that, I think that's a beautiful segue to something else that's completely chaotic and catastrophic and tragic. My next topic, which is Sha Wisconsin. We have probably all seen this video. If not, I will not show it on this episode. I advise it, if you do want to go watch it, definitely understand it's graphic and it's very disturbing. So if you have, kind of a squeamish stomach, I would definitely advise against it. And what I want to do in this segment here is not really get into the political left and right. There's a big, let's call it kerfuffle going on right now.
Putting it lightly, man.
Yeah, between the two sides, it's a very polarized discussion. If you want to call it a discussion, it's more of a giant argument and a fight, if you will, a tussle for truth and fact, which is being skewed heavily by the amount of attention it's getting from polarized sources. So to eschew all that, I'm going to talk about the facts around again, and I'm tying this back to the opening segment, with my poetry, what I really wanted to do and bring through this theme, and really for the podcast as a whole, is common ground. And I think all of us, regardless of what side of the political sphere you fall on, what side of the ideological sphere you fall on, if you have a family member or a close friend that is taken from you before their time, as a young person or just unexpectedly, really, that's just pure pain. And that's the tragedy. So I want to use this segment to focus on the loss of life, and the loss of dignity, and the loss of limbs and usage of limbs. So first and foremost, I want to send peace, love, and healing to the family of Jacob Blake, who was, the victim of the original incident that this all started from. He was a Black man that was shot in the back 7 times by a police officer, is currently and may forever be paralyzed from the waist down. Again, I'm not going to get into any pointing fingers, who did what, was it justified, was it not justified? I'm particularly focusing on the victims and the loss of, again, life and dignity. So for Jacob Blake, big up to your family, sending you all strength, all of his family members that are impacted by this. And of course, Jacob himself, who is still in a hospital bed, paralyzed from the waist down due to this very tragic incident that hopefully will, eventually be solved in the court of law, and justice will be served if these perpetrators are brought to the court of justice, which that it remains to be seen, because I don't think anybody has been arrested or even questioned in that capacity as of yet.
No, yeah.
So Jacob Blake, paralyzed from the waist down, shot in the back 7 times. And I do want to add, in front of his 3 children who were in the vehicle.
Absolute insanity.
So just completely tragic and traumatic. Those kids will never be the same, no matter what the outcome is, even if he gets his limbs or his use of his limbs back and he gets back to full health. That's a traumatic event that they will never forget. And it will forever bring pain, and they will need years of therapy to become, functional members of society that don't have just catastrophic PTSD from this event, seeing their father almost be murdered and thankfully survive. Thank all the universe for the fact that he survived, but now he's paralyzed from the waist down. So it's a completely different lifestyle, and a lot of pain and suffering for him and his family. So, just again, prayers, strength, love going out to him and to all of the people impacted by this, especially the community at large, the Black communities of Black and brown people across the world that continue to see this brutality and this unjustified, lethal use of force, aggressive use of force that we need to get eradicated from our day-to-day lives. And anyway, without getting too much further down that rabbit hole, let's shift gears to the folks that actually lost their lives in subsequent protests in Kenosha out of the fallout of this event. There have been protests and uprisings, whatever people want to call it. I'm not going to go as far to use the word riots. I think there has been some unrest. There has been some property damage. I'm not sure if, we can call it full-on riots. We in California are very familiar with what riots are. We are very familiar with what happened when Rodney King situation happened. Riots there's a big spectrum for what a riot is, but there's definitely unrest. There's definitely protesters in the street. There's definitely been, documented property damage, dumpsters being lit on fire. Nonetheless, the most catastrophic and tragic part of all of this fallout has been the loss of life. Particularly for 2 individuals, I will say Anthony Huber and Joseph Rosenbaum have lost their lives because of this fallout. Again, not going to get into the particulars of, did they deserve it? Were they in the wrong place? Were they making wrong decisions? Again, none of that matters. Sending peace, love, and healing to the families impacted, to their surviving family members. Again, that's the ultimate point I want to make here, is that this is loss of life, which cannot be recouped. It should not be politicized, but it is being politicized. It should not be dissected, and it is being dissected. But at the end of the day, the fact is, people that were alive earlier this week or last week are now gone, and they have died. Kyle Rittenhouse was the gunman that killed these people, and he has been arrested and will face his day in court. And I'm going to leave that up to the jury of his peers to eventually make the call on his fate based on the evidence that's provided. Again, I'm not going to politicize it. What this is for is a memorial, kind of just a moment to reflect on loss of life, which is the absolute worst case scenario for polarized, hysterical political escalation. On top of that, there was another victim who was shot in the arm. I'm not sure if that victim is going to lose the arm, but he is going to survive. That victim's name is Gage Grosskreutz. Reportedly, he was a medic that had a handgun on him and approached the shooter, Kyle Rittenhouse. I think there's some facts to be, again, discerned and evidence to be provided on whether or not he still had his hand on his firearm or his arms were up. I've heard mixed reports, but nonetheless, he was also shot. So he is a gunshot victim. And I do want to send love and strength to him as well in his recovery from being shot. That's really what I wanted to focus on with this segment and really bring it back to the fact that, we all have to take a look at ourselves in the mirror, regardless of what side of the spectrum we fall on from a political standpoint, from a standpoint of socioeconomics, from a standpoint of class, from a standpoint of Republican or Democrat, or indifferent. The absolute worst case scenario for these types of situations is loss of life. And right next to that is, significantly severe injuries. And both of those happened. And the perpetrator is one 17-year-old kid. So let's not also forget that this is something that, it's a polarizing circumstance, completely extracted from all of the political implications around it. Add to that the gaslighting that is being done by the administration that's currently in charge in this country. Again, the politicization, the polarization of these actions. Eventually, hopefully, those folks will also have their day in court on if their behavior is ultimately going to help progress our society forward, or if it's going to end in more divisiveness and more, God forbid, universe forbid, more violence. We hope to God that, and we hope to the universe that's not what happens. But the energy does not look good. So I'm gonna finish up here by saying, I know Flex and myself agree on this. We have differing political views. We have similar political views. There are things we agree on, things we disagree on. But one thing I think we agree on, and we hope to bring to all of our audience out there, is that at the end of the day, we need to look out for each other as human beings. We need to find common ground first and foremost. We need to come with calm, constructive mechanisms to progress forward as a civil society. And we need to get out of this cycle of violence and hatred, bullying, divisiveness, and look for those areas where we are alike and build from that. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, that's where can win together, all of us. Doesn't matter what your affiliations are politically. At the end of the day, we all have to look out for each other because we're one species on one planet. That's a fact. And we don't get a second chance. We don't get a second planet. We don't get a second society. So let's look for common ground. Let's look for areas where we can come together and in a meaningful way, in a constructive way, in a safe way for our future generations. And let's quickly try and address the pain and the suffering and the animosity that's causing these types of situations to escalate and get out of hand and ultimately end in the worst case scenario, which is loss of life. With that, I'm going to, pass it up to Flex for the next topic. Just want everybody to know that this is a very, very unfinished situation. It's a developing situation. But what's already finished is, there have been people who have lost their lives and people who have been traumatized forever. And we need to look at ourselves and say, hey, what am I doing to help prevent that from continuing to happen?
Excellently put, my good sir. Yeah.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
That is the number one focus. That should be the number one focus, is we got to preserve our lives. There's so many people hurting out there right now, and it's completely understandable given the situation with the pandemic and businesses being closed, people out of jobs. But not to get into politics and who said what and he said, she said type stuff. At the end of the day, we're all Americans. We're all people of the earth. We're all French, Puerto Rican, Chinese, African. I know that's a continent. We have to get to a point at some time where we are talking again and having conversations to move forward, to make progress. Otherwise, yeah, it's going to be all out civil war, and I don't think anybody wants that, right? So, excellently said, my friend. Well, I'm going to go jump into some more interesting news. What are we calling this topic again? Big numbers. Big numbers in science. Bam. So we're going to start out. I'm going to start out with some climate change information, and then Tony's going to tag team with me on this one. So let me share the content here. This is a BBC News article for those of you that are listening on the podcast, audio only, analog channels or digital. bbc.com/news/science-environment, specifically about Greenland. So unprecedented ice loss as Greenland breaks record. We've been hearing this year after year after year. I haven't talked too much about it in the past, but I definitely thought this was worth at least speaking on just for a few minutes. So scientists say the loss of ice in Greenland lurched forward again last year, breaking the previous record by 15%. So a new analysis says that the scale of the melt was unprecedented in records dating back to 1948. But essentially, the most important thing here is it's expected that something like the 2019 or 2012 years will be repeated. In 2019, losses would be enough to cover the entire United Kingdom with 2.5 meters of meltwater. And then, yeah, this is the area I was looking for. The authors say that this was due to 2 very cold summers in Greenland, followed by heavy snows in autumn. However, the return of high levels of melting in 2019 is a major concern. So essentially, we did break the record, but both in 2018 and 2017 saw decreased ice losses lower than any other 2-year period since 2003. So, the Earth is dynamic, it's organic. There's things that are cooling a little bit, but the overall trend, the general trend that we're tracing here is a constant acceleration over, longer periods of time of ice melt in Greenland. So while 2020 so far has seen average conditions, the overall impact of the massive ice losses seen in recent years could have major implications for people living in low-lying areas, specifically Florida, Bangladesh, the Netherlands. Those are all areas that will most likely have to depopulate. I mean, that's just a fact. Like within 50 years, they'll have to depopulate unless there's some kind of solar cycle that we're currently unaware of, where the sun starts to cool massively and it kind of negates all of the CO2 that we've been pumping into the atmosphere. That creates a temporary or short-term reversal. At some point in time, there's going to be a requirement to move, not 1 billion, but I think it was 500 million people on this planet into higher ground areas. So the take-home message is that if we reduce CO2 and we reduce our limits of global warming, then also the risk for huge contributions from Greenland in the near future will also be reduced. So nothing really new here. There's another article I wanted to reference. This is from the NSIDC. So it's the the National Snow and Ice Data Center. They're out of Boulder, Colorado, from the University of Colorado Boulder. And this is the most current information. So the previous article I referenced was mainly all of the data that was pulled from last year, which was written last week, which is why I'm referencing it. But this one has more current data up until August 1st. So the total aerial extent of surface melting through August 1st, 2020 was well above the 1981 to 2010 average. Total melt day extent was 18.6 million square kilometers, 7.18 million square feet or square miles, sorry, for 2020 versus 14.4 million square kilometers or 5.6 million square miles for the entire 1981 to 2010 average. So the season was marked by a series of moderate spikes in melt extent, primarily in the southeast and northwest. The peak one-day melt extent for 2020 to date was July 10th, when 551,000 square kilometers or 212,700 square miles, or 34% of the ice sheet surface melted. The maximum number of melt days occurred in 2 areas. I even read an article, so that you see this graphic where you have the red around Greenland on the exterior perimeter of the ice sheet. Greenland. I even read an article that's saying, "Oh, well, it's just on the outsides of Greenland. It's the middle of it hasn't melted yet." Well, that's actually incorrect. I mean, you can actually see some little orange specules here, so it is starting to melt in the middle. But how does an ice cube melt? Right? You put an ice cube on the table, and it doesn't melt from the middle to the exterior. The outside starts to melt first. So. I love reading all these denial kind of, articles and let's actually look.
All melting has to start somewhere. And exactly.
So again, for those of you who are listening, we'll put the links in the YouTube channel.
There's a lot of cool graphs and figures here for sure. Check that out if you are so inclined, because this is really kind of captivating stuff to see actually visually. It's really, really cool.
And then below average summer snowfall, along with the western side of the Greenland, increased ablation, exposing ancient dust and soot on the surface. This has led to some of the darkest snow-covered conditions seen to date in Greenland along its western ablation area. The ablation area is the area of the glacier where more glacier mass is lost than gained, and where the all-winter snow melts each year, and the underlying ice is exposed and melts further. It's another interesting thing that kind of ties into something that Tony and I talked about offline a couple of weeks ago. All the ice melt, or the permafrost melting in Siberia, which is potentially unleashing viruses that have been kept trapped in the ground for hundreds of thousands of years, if not millions of years.
Amazing.
Another topic for another show.
Oh boy.
So I'll leave it at that. Tony, if you want to jump into fossils discovered.
Yes. Yeah, we're going to talk about we're going to got some other big numbers in science here. Let me share my screen. The first thing I'm going to talk about actually is this gigantic number. This is an article from thescientist.com. Again, if you guys want to check the links out for these articles, that'll be all in the description. This one is very, very, very big number, a very big number in science. 750 million. That's with the big M. Genetically modified mosquitoes will be released in the Florida Keys. Somebody say Florida? Yes, they did. Wow. Florida, baby. They just keep coming with the hits. So I'm going to read it. Yeah, it's just, oh man. I'm going to read a little bit of an excerpt straight from this article. And we're going to kind of set the stage here for the background on this. So here we go. With the aim of reducing rates of mosquito-borne illnesses, yellow fever and dengue fever, a pilot program will release 750 million genetically modified mosquitoes into the Florida Keys in 2021. That's not that far away, people. Thanks to approval by the Barrier Islands Mosquito Control District Board of Commissioners at a meeting on Tuesday, August 18th, not that long ago. The strain of genetically modified mosquitoes known as OX513A is an altered form of Aedes aegypti created by UK-based biotech firm Oxitec. What they say here that the released mosquitoes will be all male, as male mosquitoes do not bite and generally only feed on nectar. Now, for those of you that are like me, as soon as you read this kind of thing, we're like, oh, they're controlling the sex. It's a little reminiscent of a movie, one of my favorite movies of all time, Jurassic Park, where they tried to manipulate nature's capabilities by making all the dinosaurs female, thinking that that would be a safe foolproof way of handling things. Anyway, I think we're on a different scale here talking about mosquitoes than we are dinosaurs. However, nonetheless, this is still scary just because of the sheer volume. 750 mosquitoes coming from somebody that I can't possibly imagine being near that, because I get devoured every night I step foot in my backyard to let my dogs out. For 5 seconds, I come away with 30 bites. And I am miserable all the time. And that is because for some reason, my blood is highly desirable by these mosquitoes all over planet Earth. So hopefully these male mosquitoes don't find a way to turn into female mosquitoes that feast on blood, and they just stick to nectar. That would be fantastic. So one other thing I'll say here is that that they're talking about the safety, and the reason for this is thanks to a conditionally lethal genetic variant. When OX513A mosquitoes mate with wild female mosquitoes, their offspring should die before they are old enough for females to begin biting. So this is good news for me. People like me. If this all happens and it's safe and no impact to the environment and we're not killing bees or other things, God knows the domino effect here. But if that's the case, and we're talking about taking out female mosquitoes that bite human flesh, I may be looking at real estate in the Florida Keys, because I am over that pain of my life. One other thing I will add from this article here is that they're saying that over the last 10 years, this UK company, Oxitec, has deployed these genetically modified mosquitoes in places like the Cayman Islands and in Brazil. But this will be the first release of any of these genetically modified mosquitoes in the United States. They add that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and scientists at the University of Florida will oversee the program. So that is my first topic in big numbers in science. That is a huge number of mosquitoes. I'm going to move on, because if I think about it any longer, I'm going to start scratching all over my legs because I have bites there constantly. And with that, let's move to the next big number in science that I wanted to cover. This is an article that you can find on npr.org. This is super exciting for me, who, as a kid, one of my first dream job was, probably due to the influence from Jurassic Park, was a paleontologist, archaeologist. I wanted to dig for historical stuff. This stuff, it really geeks me out. I love it. I'm just a huge nerd for anything that has to do with ancient history and fossils. So with that, this article talks about a fallen boulder in the Grand Canyon that revealed 313 million-year-old fossil footprints. These were tetrapod footprints, which I think one of the best ways to kind of liken that to modern animals is like a dog or a cat. These animals walk with this, what's it called here from the article here? It's a distinct gait of ancient tetrapods called a lateral sequence walk. So dogs and cats have this lateral sequence walk. It's when the legs on one side of the animal move in succession, the rear leg and the foreleg alternating with the opposite side. So again, this fallen boulder revealed these footprints in the Grand Canyon that are 313 million years old. So to put that in perspective, Earth has been here a lot longer than Amazon and Google and Microsoft and even systemic racism. So let's kind of take a step back sometimes and think about the fact that we're living on a planet hurtling through space filled with these miracles. And once we're gone as a species, these miracles will continue to proliferate. So it's just something that I look to sometimes to kind of pull back from the stress of day-to-day life as a human being in this modern chaotic world we live in. So those are my two gigantic numbers. The last number I wanted to cover is not an article. It's actually a kind of a anniversary, and it's for the publication Scientific American, which was first published in 1845. So they are now celebrating 175 years of scientific focused publications. And I wanted to give a big ups to the family over there at Scientific American, because obviously with our podcast, we hope to do a lot of touchstone topics and subject matter related to science. And I get a lot of good content from them. I love following up with Scientific American. They're always on target with the latest and greatest in what's happening in the scientific world. So big ups to them on 175 years of success and still going strong. Love that type of longevity. And it's a rarity this day and age to see something that's, got that type of longevity, kind of like, fossils in the Grand Canyon. That's some longevity for you. So yeah, with that's big numbers in science. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Yeah.
Oldest American founded.
Yes. I'm pretty sure it is the oldest, still operating for sure. The oldest and still operating publication.
Thank God it's science. That's amazing.
Yes, exactly.
Incredible.
Yes, indeed. Again, check them out. Yeah.
I was gonna say, thank God it's science, right?
Thank the Big Bang. Yeah, I love it. It's perfect. It fits perfectly with the, thank God and all the souls that had to do with the science succeeding. I love it. All the links to all those articles will be in the description, so keep an eye out for that if you guys want to read and geek out on some of this cool science stuff like we do. Be sure to check that out. Yeah, so that was our big numbers in science segment. What do we got next for the people here, Alex?
Well, we're going to try something new this time. Something I'd love to get some feedback on from you guys. If you're interested in this, if you're not interested, we can scrap it all together. But I just thought we'd talk about some market news.
Perfect.
Woo!
Hey!
So I will preface with this. I'm going to speak on 3 different companies. I am invested in all 3 of these companies. I have no affiliation with any of these companies, but I do have personal investments in these companies. This is not financial advice, and I'm wrong 100% of the time. So after
beautiful
that,
disclaimer.
Guys and gals, if you haven't heard about Tesla, I mean, oh my goodness, Tesla, my Esla. So today was a big stock split for Tesla stock and Apple stock as well. Tesla just continues to blow people's minds, including my own. There's a whole group of people called the Tesla shorters. If you haven't heard of them, please Google them. It's absolutely mind-bogglingly hysterical how there's this whole community of people that just hate Tesla and they want them to fail, and they think they're just a bunch of idiots, and Elon Musk is a crazy person, and the company was going to go bankrupt 100 million times, and they had all these reasons why it was going to happen. But unfortunately for them, they've lost millions of their own money, millions of their own dollars. And Tesla, so it did remain stagnant. I mean, as a stock performer, it remained quite stagnant for, the better half of the first, maybe not 10 years that it was publicly traded, but at least for the last 3 to 4 years, it just, hovered around 200, 300. And then something happened, right? Something happened in late 2019. They started to turn a profit. Wow, imagine that. So they peaked in February. This is 180, but because of the stock split today, it was actually closer to 1,000. And then Rona caused everything to crash. Tesla was definitely a part of that, but they didn't go too hard, and they've just steadily been going back up. And quarter after quarter, since Rona, and even before late, in late 2019, they had been turning a profit. So they beat expectations again. They announced a stock split. The stock continued to go up, continued to go up, and the stock split again today, and the stock continues to go up. So what are my thoughts on this? I mean, look at the market cap. It's just, $464 billion. It's just absolutely insane, right? For a company that's barely making a profit. But really, the key takeaway here, for those of you that aren't too familiar or don't know a whole lot about Tesla and what they do, they're not just a car company. They're an energy company. They make solar panels. They make batteries. They're also an applications company. They're going to dominate, theoretically, the autonomous driving market with all of the data that they have. And if you didn't know this part about Tesla, when you buy a Tesla, all the driving that you do, every second that you are driving that car, data is being captured and it's being sent back to Tesla. And so when you park your car at night, 1 gigabyte file, usually about that size, gets uploaded to Tesla. And they have the most data, even more than Google, which owns Waymo. And here in the Bay Area, we see the Waymo vehicles driving themselves all around. And there's a human being in the car, but they're basically driving themselves. They've been doing that for years. Tesla's way ahead of them in terms of actual data that they've captured, that they're able to analyze. They also have their own microprocessors that they've developed for the self-driving capability. So they're years ahead of like the Mercedes-Benz, the BMWs, even GM. Everyone's playing catch up. So this is the reason why you see so much hype around the stock. This is why they're going so crazy. Market cap's really high right now. Their PE is price to earnings ratio is 1,290. Look, like a healthy price to earnings ratio is like 10, 20, right? 1,290 is absolute insanity. So am I going to sit here and tell you to buy Tesla? Again, this is not trading advice, and I'm 100% wrong 100% of the time. I think a $1 trillion market cap in the next 5 to 10 years is absolutely plausible. So I think the stock should continue to rise. There will be a correction. There has to be a correction at some point. But I truly believe that do your own research, please. That Tesla has so many more opportunities than most may think. Before closing on Apple, I'll just touch on Zoom. Zoom is a product that I think most of us are now familiar with because of Roni Rona. And they've haven't really surprised me too much, because as soon as the pandemic hit, it was pretty obvious everyone that was able to keep their jobs was going to start working from home, or many people that used to work in the office or somewhere else but still had the opportunity to work from home, they had to video conference, right? So what do they use? They use Zoom. And Zoom is now the new Kleenex, like Tone said earlier when we were talking pre-show. It's the new Colgate. It's the new Google. Like, go find something on the internet. Okay, I'm going to Google it, right? Like, let's jump in a video conference. We're going to Zoom now. So it's a ubiquitous name. Everybody knows Zoom, and they announced their earnings today, and they quadrupled their profits from a couple of years, or from last quarter, from last year. So their PE is also completely out of control, 1,923, and their market cap is $91 billion. It's pretty high.
They are here to stay.
They're pretty much here to stay. And this isn't showing.
Does it show that?
There it is, remote office.
Yeah.
This doesn't show the after hours. Let's just go to after hours real quick. I just want to show you guys Zoom after hours.
For folks listening, we're looking at these live tickers, stock market, so you can definitely check this out as well.
They're up 73.92 after hours, right? So 399.
Oof. So tomorrow. Yeah.
So they close at 325. Will there be a sell-off tomorrow? Probably. Who knows? Again, not trading advice. And the last one is Apple. Apple to me is kind of like Microsoft, which is kind of like probably I would say Google now, which is kind of like Amazon. Yes, they're all tech stocks, but they're kind of like gold. They're not going to grow exponentially, I think, from here on out. Apple split today. They did a 4-to-1 split. So if you own one share of Apple, now you own 4, and the price was cut into 4. No, you didn't quadruple your money.
Mm-mm.
For those of you who don't understand a stock split. They're also the first U.S. company to hit $2 trillion, and now they're at $2.2 trillion. $200 billion in a matter of minutes or a day, which is insanity. A lot of people are saying they're the most valuable company in the world. I believe the most valuable company in the world was that Saudi Arabian Aramco, or the Saudi Arabian oil giant that went IPO. I think they were the most valuable. They had about a $2 trillion valuation. Apple's probably either equal or more at this point. And they've just been growing steady for a long time. I mean, gosh, if you could have bought Apple back in December 1st, 97 for 21 cents a share equivalent. I don't know if this is taking inflation into consideration, but yeah.
Yeah. And for the listeners out there too, I just want to call this out real quick. I'm looking at this and this is crazy. So as you referenced earlier, the PE ratio for companies like Tesla and Zoom right now is through the roof. They're over 1,000, 13, like the Tesla's 13 or 14 and Zoom is 19. Apple is showing a PE ratio of 39.
Yeah, which is still pretty high. If you talk to conservative investors, like if you talk to Warren Buffett, he's going to be like, what is Warren Buffett like? He likes Coca-Cola, right? So we go to KO and we look at their PE ratio. It's 23. It's still, yeah.
Yeah, like you said, anything above 5 is good. Like 10 is good, right? I mean,
no, you don't want the number to be too high.
Yeah,
when the number is too high, when the PE ratio is too high, that means they're generally speaking,
overvalued.
Historically, it meant it was overvalued. But with these tech companies, it's kind of, you have to look at other metrics to kind of gauge.
Yeah. Especially depending on the age of the company, right? That is, they could just now be getting into their ramp up, which I think you and I agree. Like that's a company like Tesla right now. Again, disclaimer: we're not telling you guys what to go do with your money. But our belief is that Tesla is here to stay, and they're going to become a dominant force of the likes of your Microsofts, your Googles, your Alphabet company. In the long term, they're going to become maybe the biggest tech company to come out of the valley. Who knows? They're certainly not. It wouldn't surprise Alex or I, but Flex or I would not be batting an eye if we saw that. We also have stocks, so we hope that is the case. But yeah, they're here to stay, just like Zoom's here to stay.
I'll put it like this: when I talk to the average person about Tesla, they think of them as a car company. I think the car sales of Tesla are going to be the lowest, hanging fruit in terms of like their revenue streams. It's the autonomous driving market, this autonomous taxi service that they're trying to do. I didn't even know this until a few months ago, but Tesla offers insurance, like car insurance, because they know their cars are safer to drive than any other car manufacturer's vehicle. So they offer their own insurance and they sell it to you for cheaper. And they're going to make hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars off of that insurance as well.
Just off of insurance.
That's just another revenue stream. So they got batteries, they got solar panels, they got insurance, they got vehicles, and then autonomous driving. A couple of those are $1 trillion industries. Like the battery industry is $1 trillion industry. Mm-hmm. The solar panel industry, maybe, I don't know. The autonomous driving, the first one to get autonomous driving, $1 trillion industry. So market cap at 464 right now. It's high. It's very high. I'd be nervous too if I was considering buying now. But I said the same thing last week and it's gone up, and the week before and it's gone up, and the week before and it's gone up. Will there be a correction? Yes. If there is a significant correction, I'd give it a look. All right, I'm going to jump right into some. I was going to call this the Fed money printer goes burr, and then I started thinking about, am I going to talk about the Federal Reserve and how do they function and the dynamics of currency and treasuries and investments. So I wasn't going to go that far into it, but I thought I'd actually introduce the world for those of you who are not familiar with Raoul Pal. I kind of got a man crush on this guy. I won't lie. Raoul Pal's he's a rock star investor. He's a super cool guy. He's a British guy, but he lived in America. He worked at Goldman Sachs and managed a hedge fund back in the early 2000s. He's a large global macro investor, and he's a big Bitcoin kind of proponent. He talks a lot about Bitcoin as being a very like he truly believes that it is like where you should be putting most of your, not most, but you should have some of your portfolio in Bitcoin. He also likes gold. He likes precious metals. And he basically spent his whole life just analyzing the dollar and the dollar, the currency ratios between the euro, the dollar, the yen, the won. So that's a little bit of info or background on Raoul Pal. And so essentially this does kind of dive into the Fed stuff. I'll just reference some of his tweets because I thought they're pretty funny. Yeah. So the current strategy of the Fed is trying to starve off debt impairment. The current strategy of the Fed trying to starve off debt impairment is near impossible. So what they've done in the last 4 months, to give you some context, the Fed has printed $3 to $4 trillion. Did they physically print the money? No, the U.S. Treasury is actually responsible for printing the dollar bills that are in your wallet. But the Federal Reserve does this by buying treasuries or buying debt, essentially investments from the United States. And they artificially or digitally create the money. Mm-hmm. And where does that money go? It goes to banks, and it creates liquidity into the banking system to allow bankers to lend to other banking facilities and to businesses and things like that. So Raoul is very kind of skeptical on everything the Fed's been doing, and he's saying basically what they're doing is impossible, or it's going to lead to catastrophe, essentially, because the money printer has gone burr. So if you're into investing and you've been following the Fed, you know that there's a meme going around with Powell, the Fed chairman, who's got a money printer and it's going burr because they're just pumping all this money out for with no real strategy and game plan. And in turn slows global growth, which is true, making the dollar shortage worse and the solvency crisis worse as cash flows fall globally, which makes the dollar in even shorter supply. So the Fed prints more money to try to replace cash flows via fiscal stimulus. Velocity of money falls. Fall globally, which makes the dollar in even shorter supply. Yeah. So all other central banks print more to offset their own systemic strains. The dollar rises since $1 of QE, which is quantitative easing, from the EBC. The European Central Bank is worth 4x in liquidity adjusted terms as $1 from the Fed. The Fed can't win, and in that turn slows global growth, making the dollar shortage. So a lot of people also don't realize that I think 65% of all countries in the world trade and rely on the dollar. So when we inflate the value of the dollar, it creates a lot of issues. And then when the dollar actually goes into a period of deflation, it can also create some counter issues for a lot of countries that need to borrow money. So let's say I loaned Tone, $100, and then I created all this inflation. Well, now your $100 is worth like $110, right? Or instead of you owing me back, $100, you owe me $110. So by printing $4 trillion to save Americans, we're actually doing a disservice to the rest of the world. All the debt that other countries owe us, or all the debt that other countries use dollars to trade in to repay their own debts or our debt that they owe us, the United States, now they owe us more as inflation grows. So it's a very complicated thing. Obviously, I won't get more into it, but
way over my head. So if anybody out there is like, hey, this is over my head, hey, welcome to the club. But that's why I love this, because we hope to span these types of topics. And Alex has done a tremendous amount of research in this world. And for those of you that are interested, definitely check out these links he's sharing. This is incredibly enlightening stuff about just the global economic status of things.
And the whole argument behind Bitcoin is kind of like the same as with gold. I won't get into the pros and cons of both in this show, but essentially Bitcoin, there's a finite amount. There's only 21 million Bitcoins that are ever going to be created. So there's a finite supply of Bitcoin. So the value theoretically will only increase as there's more demand and more people buying into Bitcoin, and as the dollar inflates. So as the dollar inflates, gold prices tend to go up. And this is if there's one thing you remember from anything I just said, and this is the hardest thing that I've had to try to wrap my brain around, but the price of gold never changes. The price of the dollar fluctuates around the price of gold. So when you see gold going up from 1,000 to 2,000, like it has in the last 10 years, it's actually the dollar that's lost its value by twofold. So you used to go to the grocery store and you bought a carton of eggs for $1.50. Now you're paying $3, right? Gold is doubled in price. So it's the same kind of theory and strategy behind Bitcoin, is that Bitcoin's value can only increase because there's a finite supply. We can't create any more of it. It should have an even more higher value than gold, because gold we can still theoretically continue to mine. Like I just read an article a couple of days ago that Elon Musk and some people are thinking of going into space to mine. They found an asteroid in the asteroid belt. It's full of gold and platinum. Trillions of dollars of gold.
Get out of here.
Yeah, it's crazy. But like, what's the reality? Like in our lifetimes, will they be able to go to this asteroid, mine gold, and bring it back? Maybe a little bit, but I don't think it would be enough in our lifetime to offset the price of gold. But I'm sure I'll eat my words because Elon Musk, when he says he's going to do something,
yeah. Well, isn't it true too that like meteorites are a precious substance here on Earth? Like meteorites,
yeah, because they're so rare and you can't.
They're so rare.
Yeah.
So could you imagine the price of meteorite gold that was mined from space? I mean,
gold is gold, but yeah.
But if they could mine the actual meteorite material too, that might even be more valuable.
Meteorites are just mainly iron, right? So like the meteorite that you find on Earth is just the iron core remains of that meteorite.
Yeah,
it's worth so much because you know there's only like so many that you can find actual meteorite, and you can say, hey, this came from space, and there's only like 12 of these, so give me $1 million for them, right?
Yeah.
But the gold initially, I can only imagine it would cost way more to go into space to mine for gold and bring it back. But there's a lot of crypto bulls out there that think that gold is a waste of time because Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are going to go and mine gold-filled asteroids and bring them back to Earth. I don't know. I don't buy that. But the Bitcoin argument is there. The gold argument is there. As part of a well-balanced portfolio, you should definitely have a little bit of gold and a little bit of Bitcoin. If you want to know more, then please comment down below, and happy to have a conversation around it. Anyway, lastly, I'll go into the stimulus deal. So yeah, our favorite guy right there. So negotiations aren't really going too well. They're supposedly, the Republicans came down $500 billion, and no, I'm sorry, the Republicans went up $500 billion. The Democrats came down $200 billion. Moving past sound bites, however, and one can see real progress toward a deal. Recall that the starting positions were $3.4 trillion in the HEROES Act passed by the House Democrats, and only $1 trillion in the HEALS Act introduced by the Senate Republicans. During negotiations early August, so 3-4 weeks ago, Pelosi offered to come down to 2.4 if Republicans would come up to 2. The offer was rejected. At the same time, Republicans offered to come up on specific issues such as unemployment benefits and aid to state and local governments. Democrats rejected this proposal. Following the call last week, however, Pelosi reduced her proposal by 200 down to 2.2. We have said again and again that we were willing to come down and meet in the middle. So anyway, anyone can just research all this, all the numbers around what the package is going to be like. What I found was interesting, though, is where is it? It's towards the bottom. According to one of the Republicans here, Mr. Meadows, Pelosi refuses to break down what's actually in the Democrats' bill. So that is the Republican argument as to why there's no movement on this. So in contrast, Democrats wants to focus on the top line number. So they just want a big dollar amount, right? They want to reach agreement on the total cost of the package, and then they want to fill in the details later. This is evident in their offer to compromise on the overall cost of the next stimulus package. And this is Forbes.com that I'm referencing, by the way. The different negotiating strategies bubbled to the surface this week. Mr. Meadows described this in an interview following his call with the Speaker, Pelosi. According to Meadows, he asked the Speaker during the call what was in her $2.2 trillion proposal, and she wouldn't tell him. I had a conversation with Pelosi, and even on her $2.2 trillion counteroffer, she couldn't tell the American people nor me what was in that, Meadows said. As reported by The Hill, Meadows added, I said, what does the $2.2 trillion represent? You know what her response was? I'm not going to tell you. Let me fill in the blanks. That's not a proper negotiation, nor is it anything that the American people can accept. So a representative for Speaker Pelosi responded saying that these comments mischaracterized their discussions. They also claimed that Mr. Meadows was unwilling to break down the cost of the Republican proposal. So it sounds like both sides are unwilling to, because they probably don't even know what's in these things.
No,
right?
They're just throwing out huge dollar amounts of fake money that doesn't currently exist, that we're going to go and make up and print again, just like you talked about previously. And it's going to just have catastrophic effects on future generations and the economy and inflation. But
at the end of all this, the message I want to make clear is there are millions of Americans that are dying, that are starving, that are hungry, that need help, that need financial assistance, they need to pay their mortgage. Luckily, we still have mortgage forbearance, I think, going on up until April of next year. If you had to file for mortgage forbearance legally, when I first read about it in April, you have 6 months. You can file for an extension after 6 months. Anyway, the whole point is we need to pass something to help the American people that lost their jobs, that were forced to close their business, that were laid off. People need assistance. Like we're not going to rebuild the economy with 30% homelessness in this country for the Milky Way's sake. So let's just keep our fingers crossed that there will be some type of movement on the stimulus package before the election. And speaking of the election, please vote. Please go out and vote. Or mail in your ballot. Mail in your ballots or vote in person. Please do your duty.
Do that. Please do that. Follow that advice. If it's the last thing you do, because it might be, vote.
Are you happy with the current 4 years? Then vote. Or are you unsatisfied with the current progress of the last 4 years? Then please vote.
Vote. Do you want more of the same? Vote. I can't believe it, and I don't know how you could possibly want the same, because I know I'm exhausted. You can see it with the bags under my eyes if you're watching, and if you're listening, you could probably hear the bags under my eyes dragging against the top of my microphone. They are that big, my friends. I'm exhausted, as I'm sure many of you are with what's going on. And then the audacity of some people to say, when I'm in charge, I'll fix everything, when they're already in charge, and shit is not okay. With that, very careful, delicately walking the line of politics. I'm going to jump into our final kind of segment here of the night. This is some housekeeping from the last episode. I'm going to wrap up with the update on the NBA playoffs. There was a very, I'll call it brief but powerful strike by the NBA in wake of the Jacob Blake shooting from Kenosha, Wisconsin. There were the first team to strike were the Bucks, who are the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They decided not to come out to the court Wednesday of this past week. And subsequent teams all aligned and started basically a strike in order to bring attention to the fact that we have a lot of work to do in terms of bringing attention to police brutality and systemic racism of the justice system in this country. So there were a lot of contentious, very escalated conversations that were happening with the NBA Players Association. Apparently, things got very heated, and one LeBron James stormed out of the meeting. There was a vote at one point where both the LA Clippers and the LA Lakers voted to end the season without finishing the playoffs. Unfortunately for them, the rest of the entire NBA, all the other 20 teams, or I think it's 20 teams or 15 teams that are left, 14 teams that are left in the playoffs, voted to continue with the playoffs. So they continue with the playoffs, but they did have a couple days of a strike. So all the games on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday were canceled or postponed, and they restarted on Saturday, this past Saturday. So with that, I just want to pull up this bracket from the last time. For those of you, again, that are listening on the podcast, you can come onto our YouTube channel and take a look at this. I'm going to talk through it really quickly and be as descriptive as I can, as quickly as I can. And essentially, this is going to be an exercise in me going back and pointing out how wrong I was. And that shows to my listeners that I have no shame in going back and admitting that I was completely wrong about certain things. But I wasn't that far off with some things, and I was pretty much spot on with others. And there are some things that are still yet decided. So with that, let me share my screen again. Again, if you're listening, this is a bracket that I did for last episode for the first round of the NBA playoffs. And I picked my winners, and I got most of them wrong. So here we go. with that, let's go here to cover the updates. So I said that my Blazers were going to beat the Lakers in 6. That was catastrophically wrong. The Lakers handled us pretty easily after that first game, which the Blazers won. But that was it. That was our only win. Lakers ended up winning that series in 5 games. They move on to the second round. They are still awaiting their opponent in this next series, which I said the Thunder would win in 7. And that was looking bleak for a while because it was 3-1 Rockets, I believe. But the Thunder have rallied and it is now 3-3. Series is tied as of tonight. So they are going to a game 7, and that prediction can still possibly come true. Again, the winner of that series will go on to face the Lakers in round 2. We will see how that unfolds later this week. Proud about that one because I thought that was way off when the Rockets went up 3-1. The next series, I was catastrophically wrong as well. I said the Nuggets would win this series in 5. I thought that they would not struggle with the Jazz whatsoever. I thought that they would let the Jazz maybe win 1 in what's called a gentleman's sweep, and boy, was that wrong. The Jazz jumped out and took a 3-1 lead in the series. But the tide has turned, and the Nuggets are now back in it, tied up all 3-3. So that's another game 7 that's happening later this week. I'm going to predict that the winner of that game will be the Nuggets. Actually, I think so. I wouldn't have been that far off in the beginning or when all said and done. I think the Nuggets handle that. Game 7, they have some experience last season in a game 7 against my Blazers. The Blazers did take that. But I think that hardens the Nuggets a little bit. They have a little bit more experience when it comes down to that crucial type of a game 7. So we're going to say that the Nuggets do win that in 7. We'll see how that unfolds. We'll have an update on that for the next episode. This next series, I said the Clippers would win it in 6 against the Mavericks. They ended up. Well, I'm sorry. I take that back. I'm trying to see that revisionist history. I said the Clippers would win it in 7. I thought it would go the full 7 games. It did not. The Clippers took care of business, and they won the series in 6 games. Mavericks did put up a fight, but they were facing some injuries. Porzingis was out for the majority of that series, so they just couldn't overcome that at the end of the day. Clippers do move on to the second round, and they will face the winner of that Nuggets-Jazz series. Moving over to the Eastern Conference, the only series that I picked to be a sweep was not a sweep. Every other series was a sweep that I did not pick to be a sweep. So the first series was the Bucks Magic. I thought the Bucks would handle business pretty easily and the Magic wouldn't have a chance. They ended up coming out and winning that first game. But the Bucks did ultimately prevail in 5 games. They move on to the second round. This next series, I said the Pacers would win in 7 games. They did not get a single win. The Heat swept them and made it look like light work. So the Heat do move on to the second round. And that series has actually started. The Heat and Bucks have started, and the Heat took game 1 tonight. With that, I'm not going to make any predictions for the second round until everybody's in the second round. So we'll follow up for that in our next episode. But again, the Heat swept, and I was very, very wrong about that. The last 2 series here, Celtics and Sixers. I said the Celtics would win in 5. Gentleman's sweep. That did not happen. The Sixers could not muster a single win. They got swept, and their coach is now fired, and that's how that unfolded. Oh, yeah, I will also add that the Pacers coach was also fired. So Nate McMillan from the Pacers fired for getting swept, and Brett Brown from the Sixers fired for getting swept. The last series here that I picked, I said that the Raptors would beat the Nets in 5, another gentleman's sweep that I predicted and was incorrect. The Raptors swept and were never challenged by the Nets. That was a very lopsided series. So the Raptors do move on to the second round. And they are playing the Celtics, and the Celtics took care of business in that first game. They whooped up on the Raptors. So we'll see how the rest of that series unfolds. It's going to be a tight one, I think, but I will make my prediction in the next episode. With that is the update for the NBA. One last piece that I do want to give a big shout out for. I love what the NBA is doing. I love what the players are doing, using their platform to bring attention to the Black Lives Matter movement, police brutality movement. Big ups to old wily vets. I think the president of the National Basketball Players Association, Chris Paul, working together with the owners, specifically Michael Jordan, who was a big catalyst in getting the owners to listen up. They have made some seriously large headway in bringing about serious change. And they actually had an ultimatum that was a deal that they struck with the owners, between the players and the owners, that come November 3rd during the presidential election, all NBA stadiums in all the cities that they are in will be used as polling places. which is a huge win for democracy, and will hopefully mitigate some of the voter suppression that is going on actively from this administration in trying to subdue the United States Postal Service role in mail-in voting, and also traditional voter suppression tactics, as in shutting down polling places the day before and not telling anybody. So in this case, we're going to have a whole bunch of gigantic stadiums across the country where they play large sporting events that are open for both, I think, registration and also for voting on election day. So that's some great news. Again, that's significant social change and impact that the NBA is bringing. They have turned their platform into a very powerful mechanism for democracy, and I love to see that. You love to see that. No matter which side of the spectrum you fall on, I think you can appreciate that. I think science and fact would ask that in any vote, in any legitimate democracy, you want to get as many people to vote as possible. Otherwise, you're just talking about manipulation and suppression, and that is not a true democracy. So anyway, with that, I will move on to the next housekeeping item here, which is going to be
wait, real quick. Didn't I read somewhere that LeBron James and a couple other folks, they got on a call with Obama to seek for some guidance?
Yes, they did. Chris Paul and
Paul,
LeBron James spoke with Obama for some guidance, and Obama, essentially his guidance was play ball. And use the platform for things like this.
So it wasn't his suggestion to turn stadiums into polling stations?
That was a deal that was struck, I think, outside of that conversation. I think Obama was essentially given a higher level recommendation to get the action back underway, because these guys get a lot of media attention and a lot of publicity before and after games. They've got press conferences, and essentially it's a soapbox for them to stand on before and after games, and all the media attention, and be able to shed more light on these social issues that mean so much to them, and they're so near and dear to everybody, to a lot of the followers of the NBA, myself included. We look to those types of people that have the access to vast audiences through these broadcast networks and through these largely advertised events and largely televised events, to leverage that in a positive way. So I think that's Obama's message to them. I don't know the specifics. Again, it was more high level, like, hey, play ball, because the more you guys are on strike, the more we're not hearing from you. And so if you're out there playing ball, then you can actually use those post-game interviews and press conferences as a mechanism to spread the good word.
It's a tough balance, man. I mean, I supported their protest, their strike to not play, but then, that's a very valid point. Like, the longer they're off camera, then the less airtime that they have to. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and there's a lot of debate to be had there about sporting events, and is it the right thing to be putting these people, especially, this isn't even taking into account the fucking pandemic that we're dealing with. You're putting these guys' lives online.
No cases so far, though, right? So far, it's been clean.
The bubble's been clean. The bubble has been clean. They've hermetically sealed that place down there in Disney. It's pretty wild to see how they've done it now.
Yeah.
I don't think that they've had such success in other leagues, such as MLB. I don't know about hockey. I think hockey's done okay. Because they've got like a couple cities that they've locked. They basically put all the teams in for the playoffs. NFL is a wild card, man. I'm really worried about the NFL.
Dude, what's up with the NFL? Like, what's going on?
There's been players that have COVID. It's still going. They're going on like business as usual, bro. Season starts next week.
What about preseason though? Preseason?
No preseason. So they eradicated preseason. Boom. But they are going to do regular season starts like they're going. So it's going to be really, really, really crazy to see. Probably a lot more injuries than you normally see in the first couple of weeks. Guys just going from basically 0 to 100.
Yeah.
I just worry about that. And then also, they're not taking the same amount of precautions.
Are they filling the stadiums?
They're still traveling. They're filling because they're allowing. I think 50%. It's like 25% capacity. I think there's like the first game of the year with the Chiefs is going to have 14,000 fans, when typically I think the stadium's capacity is like 60,000 or 70,000. But so they're reduced capacity, and I think they're mandating masks. So they are doing some things, but they are going to have large crowds. And I don't know how that all plays out when you're talking about concessions and lines at the bathroom and lines at the gate. It's chaos, man.
I mean, if you wear your mask, you wash your hands, you do your best. It should, be less of a problem than it would have been otherwise. But
but it's all roll of the dice.
Yeah. This virus is here. This virus is here to stay until we get a vaccine, and then it is. So.
Oh man, yeah. Oof.
Woo.
With that, we'll move on to the next couple of housekeeping items here. Actually, there's just one other major one, and that is kind of a PSA for all of our listeners out there. We totally understand, and we're right there with you in the trenches with 2020 and all the stuff that's going on. There's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of polarization. There's a lot of pressure on people that have been put out of work or that are working extra hard, working on the front lines, or dealing with, daycare and homeschooling on top of working from home. And there's just a lot more pressure this year than ever before in terms of our day-to-day lives. And so we want to bring attention to mental health and say that, it's not a weakness. It is a absolute essential mechanism to take care of your mental health first and foremost, because if you're not okay with number one and taking care of yourself first and foremost, then you're not going to be able to show up for the people that you love as well as you should be able to. And there are a lot of resources out there, free resources, counseling services, hotlines. Check your local information. Go on Dr. Google and look for places in your local communities where you can go get free counseling. There are hotlines, there are support groups that, if you have insurance, if you're lucky enough to have insurance, definitely check into that. I think that this is something that is still so stupidly stigmatized in this day and age, but it should not be. Therapy is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of strength. And in this modern day and age, with all the fast pace of information and the social media and the pressure that we're facing, like it's not human. We're not back in the days living in a village, living in the cabin, taking care of our tribe, and we don't have to worry about anything else. There's no public communication. There's no, basically direct connection to the entire rest of the world. And it's just a different time that we're alive in. And I don't know if we haven't evolved to be able to handle this amount of information all at once, all the time. So reach out and use those resources, get that help, lean into it, take time for yourself, make sure you're creating space on a day-to-day basis to breathe, to exercise, just to really take care of yourself so that you can show up in your best possible ways for those people that depend on you. And that's kind of the big announcement we wanted to finish up with tonight. Focus on that mental health because we need it. Again, tying it back to the very first part of the show tonight, common ground. If we're going to find common ground, we're going to find a way to progress. We're going to find a way to move forward together and overcome our differences. We got to be clear-headed. We got to be calm, and we got to be reasonable to be able to put forth constructive change. So focus on that. Take care of yourselves and make sure that you're taking care of yourself first and foremost, your mental health, so that you can be your best for everybody that is in your life.
Eloquently said, my brother.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
On that, we're going to do another scratch lesson. So I'm going to get set up, shift the camera over there to do another Scratch 101.
Sick.
Got to make sure, just to remind y'all, if you haven't done already, please comment and subscribe to the channel if you're feeling what we're doing. And we definitely want to hear from you guys. What topics do you want us to cover? What topics do you not want us to cover again? Things like that. So I'm going to go jump over here and get set up, and then I'll be right back.
Dope. While you're doing that, I just want to send a big ups to the 3 live viewers that we got out there. Not sure if that's family, if that's friends, if that's newbies, if that's crewbies, but whatever it is, maybe thank you for showing up. Please make sure to like, subscribe, comment, put your feedback under the show in the comments. Let us know what you like. Get ready for a little bit of some of the musical stylings of DJ Flex. Again, for those of you that are just listening on the podcast, you can tune in to this episode on YouTube to actually see for yourself the freshness of our homie DJ Flex on the wheels of steel, and watch how he gets down. With that, I'm going to pass it up north to Flex on the wheels of steel.
Flex on the decks. Thanks, Tone. For those listening only, this is obviously going to be really hard for me to describe everything that I'm doing, but I'm going to do my best. Last show, if you were with us, I demonstrated the baby scratch, and I'll just go over it one more time. It's literally just moving the record back and forth and pushing that crossfader in and out a little bit. And today we're going to do the second easiest scratch, I think, called the transform. And all the transform is, so the baby scratch was more your left hand kind of doing all the work, and your timing with the crossfader, or whatever hand is on the record, you're doing all the work, and then you're just bringing it in and out with the crossfader. The transform is a little bit opposite. You're still doing a lot of moving back and forth with your hand that's on the record, but you're really focusing on the crossfader to get it on beat. And let's get some music going here. So I'm just going to freestyle a little bit, and then I'll come back and describe what I'm doing. So as you can see, all I'm doing is moving the crossfader in and out on beat, and you always want to be on time, on beat. But it's really just a pulsing, just a click, 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 click. So just count in your head, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and either go in on the 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the beat, or do halftime or double time. So halftime would be 1, 2, 1, 2, and double time. I'm not gonna do it verbally, but and with the hand that's on the record, you can move it any way you want. And the more crazy you get with it, the cooler it can sound, as long as you maintain beat on the crossfader. And if we combine the lesson that we learned last time with today's lesson, so if we combine the baby scratch with the transform, you get a little something like this. And that's the transform. Keep practicing, scratches.
Such fire. Oh my God, dude. Such fire, bro. Thank you, Alex Flex, DJ Flex from the north side. Wow. I love it, dude. I love it.
Yeah, a little rusty on that one, but I think the message got across.
We hit our peak viewership while you were doing that, bro. It got up to 4 people. I don't know where they were at. There was like 3 people on Twitch. So yeah, dude, you know, I mean, we're moving on up. That's more. I think last episode we had a grand total of 0. In this episode we got up to 4, bro. So we're moving up, baby.
Man,
That's
Twitch
it.
is hot. Twitch is hot. Like,
Twitch is where
I
it's
saw
at.
people jumping in and out like the whole show on Twitch. So our Twitch viewers, thank you for giving us 2 minutes of your life.
Yes,
we appreciate that.
We appreciate that, Twitch. Much love. Come back next time, and you know, spread the love, share the links, let people know that it's popping over here with the Soldiers of Science. We talk about some heavy topics. We hope we brought you guys some insightful information about, you know, all the different stuff that we're interested in that's going on in the world right now. Some thoughtful stuff. Again, check the description after the episode for the bars that I spit at the beginning, all the links to all the articles that we talked about. Again, peace, love, positivity to everybody out there. Much love to all the victims in Kenosha, Washington, and Portland. I know that, again, no matter which side of the spectrum you fall on, loss of life is a tragedy. So we want to be mindful of that and say that, you know, we feel for y'all, and we wish you healing and strength. Hopefully, man, join us on this fight to, you know, come back to a place that's not violent and that's reasonable, and that looks at us as a collective, first and foremost, instead of, you know, looking at where our differences outline us. Let's look for the places where we're connected.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Tone.
Thanks, brother. All right, man. With that, we're going to wrap it up. We had a lengthy one tonight. Lots to talk about.
Went a little bit over, yeah, but it's okay. It's all
I like
good.
it. Hey, under 2 hours, man. That's all we're shooting for, baby.
Yeah.
Thanks, y'all, for tuning in. Thanks
for watching, y'all. Peace.
Yep. Catch you next time. Peace.